Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut. He's the ranking member on the House Intelligence Committee. Good to have you on. What do you make of what we hear so far about this potential deal? And also Marco Rubio making it very clear that Russia's response will make it very clear to all of us where they stand on peace.
Yeah, Mika, I was sort of chuckling at your characterization at the top of the hour of Ukraine agreeing to a ceasefire. They didn't agree to a ceasefire. They bent the knee to the extortion that started in the Oval Office when President Trump and Vice President Vance beat up on Zelensky, cut off his flow of arms, and cut off the intelligence sharing that every day saves lives in places like Kyiv. So no surprise there when you're being extorted by the most powerful country in the world. Eventually, you have to go along with it. Now, a ceasefire is a good thing. Fewer people will die. The resumption of intelligence to Ukraine, I should say, about Russia is a good thing. But let's be very clear about what's going to happen in this ceasefire. The Russians are going to take advantage of their industrial might to move troops to surround the Kursk salient, where, as you know, the Ukrainians had invaded into Russia, and to reposition for a much more bloody subsequent follow-up once the ceasefire, as it inevitably will, is ended.
Congressman, certainly you express real pessimism there that Russia will abide this in at least any meaningful way, perhaps beyond the 30 days. So what does need to happen, in your estimation, for a more permanent end to this conflict?
Well, and let me be clear here. I think that, Russia thinks in terms of years and decades with respect to Ukraine, as we saw, because they really started this invasion in 2014, 11 years ago when they went into Crimea. So I don't know that Putin sort of 6 months from now is on the move. But this doesn't end because, of course, the way that this has come about is one that says to Vladimir Putin, this is painful and expensive, but eventually you get what you want, especially if Donald Trump is president. So, again, we'll need to see what sort of security guarantees are ultimately given to the Ukrainians. Donald Trump says there will be none. That plus Putin learning that, expensive though it may be, he achieves his aims is something that he learns. By the way, it's something that President Xi in Beijing also learns with respect to what he may or may not do in Taiwan. So, again, I don't know if this is a disaster in the next 6 months or the next 6 years, but given the way that the United States has behaved, this is a disaster being set up.
Well, your characterization, though a Democrat, and people watching may think, well, he's just saying that because he's an elected Democrat. It lines up a good bit with what the Wall Street Journal editorial page says. In fact, the headline is Ukraine bows to Trump ceasefire. I am curious, though. The Biden administration, for years, said this war was not going to be won militarily. What Marco Rubio said flying over to Saudi Arabia, as I said on the show a few days ago, echoed what I heard from the Biden administration all the way back to 2023. So what does need to be done, in your estimation, to make sure that this ceasefire is permanent?
Yeah, Joe, fair characterization, by the way, and you sort of brought partisanship into this, so let me indicate how I think about this partisanship. You characterized Biden's position exactly right, which is that this was not going to be won. The way this would have been won would have been 3 years ago when the Russians first invaded, if the Biden administration had given the Ukrainians quickly the weapons they needed to push the Russians back. That did not happen. Instead, we, for a period of years, gave the Ukrainians the weapons they needed to lose slowly. That's a bad strategy that was implemented by the Biden administration, if what we're talking about here is partisan views. But to your question, your forward-looking question, the key now is security guarantees, right? So, we cut the ground out from under Ukraine. Why the president chose to do that rather than with Russia, I have my theories on, but we cut the ground out from under Ukraine. Now the question is, what security guarantees will be provided? Donald Trump says no. My guess is that Europe is going to come up with something. But if there are not good security guarantees that make it obvious to Putin that he cannot go beyond whatever line of ceasefire he gets to, this will happen again. And it will be, to a significant measure, our fault. To the early waffling of the Biden administration, to the Republican Party, which delayed aid in the Congress for a year, and now, of course, to that Chamberlain in Munich moment when the president and the vice president beat up on President Zelensky in the Oval Office and voted with Russia and North Korea against our allies in the United Nations.
And again, the partisanship that you say I brought up was actually bipartisanship, saying that both you as a Democrat and the conservatives who support the Republicans for the most part on the Wall Street Journal editorial page are also deeply concerned with this. Do you believe, we were talking to Ambassador McFaul yesterday, do you believe the possibility of a European peacekeeping force and American business interests in Ukraine combine in the future to build a sort of tripwire against a future Putin invasion? Because as Ambassador McFaul said, those mining interests that Donald Trump talks about, that's not like a 6-month plan. You go in, you invest, you build infrastructure, and it's years in the making. Does that provide a tripwire that provides security for Ukraine?
Not even close, Joe. I mean, this whole bit of extortion where we are demanding minerals in exchange for helping the Ukraine, is just absurd. No, I mean, let me tell you how this happens, right? 2 years from now, when there's a bunch of American mining companies in eastern Ukraine, and Putin decides that the Trump administration is coming to a close, so he needs to finish this thing, he makes up some sort of provocation on the part of the Ukrainians. He says, "Oh my gosh, they did this. We are going to move in some troops, and we're going to start, setting up a no-fly zone, so you better get your people out." That's how that ends. Now, so that's a sham. That's a complete sham. Could the Europeans put together a peacekeeping force? Probably not today, but, Europe has sat up and taken notice that the United States no longer stands with them. So I think that over the course of the next couple of years, they're going to do what they need to do to develop a pretty significant military capability. And if they have the fortitude, which this administration and candidly the Biden administration didn't show, put enough of that military capability into and around Ukraine to deter a Russian, advance. But right now, that's not really a thing.
So, ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, Democratic Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut, thank you very much for coming on the show this morning. We appreciate it.